as she looked up at the unfathomable night sky. Would the happiness waiting for her ahead really be within reach? This thought made her both excited and slightly uneasy about the unknown. Just then, she heard faint footsteps behind her. Congratulations on your coronation, chess sage. The voice was gentle and polite. It was Izuka Yoshitaka. Su Nuwa reined in her exposed emotions, turned around, and merely nodded slightly, her tone indifferent. Thank you. She increasingly disliked dealing with Izuka. Beneath his seemingly perfect etiquette, she instinctively sensed an unsettling aura, like moss growing in a damp corner. However, Izuka did not leave as he usually would after some casual pleasantries. He took a step closer, lowered his voice. And a glimmer of something in his eyes made Su Nuwa instantly alert. Just now, as the event concluded, I inadvertently saw that child Nakamura key being taken away by a strange woman. Before leaving, that woman specifically asked me to convey a message to you. Su Nuwa's heart sank. Little key? A woman? She turned around, her gaze sharp as she fixed on Izuka. What kind of woman? A glimmer of wickedness flashed quickly in Ijiao Igao's eyes as he licked his lips and described. A very beautiful woman with a stunning figure and a unique aura. She's wearing a dress that accentuates her figure. Both Su Nuwa and Su Yunzhou in their thoughts gasped in shock. The Moonlit Princess. Who else could it be? Her kidnapping of Xiao Qi was reasonable after all, as she was the one who uncovered the secret of the assassination of Wagonjin. What did she want you to tell me? Su Nuwa's voice turned cold. Ijiao seemed to enjoy relaying this special message, leisurely saying. She said they are at a hot spring resort in Sapporo, waiting for you at the Moonlit meeting. You must go. The Moonlit meeting. Su Nuwa frowned. Wasn't that the place where she spent Valentine's Day with her teacher just a couple of days ago? Choosing to meet, there was no coincidence. It was a blatant demonstration. It was clearly telling her, your every move, your whereabouts, are under the organization's watch. You have nowhere to escape. What about the teacher? Su Nuwa urgently asked in her mind, her voice tinged with panic. The time until the midnight helicopter rendezvous agreed upon with Ing was running very tight. Su Yunzhou fell silent for a brief moment. He quickly weighed the options. According to the original plan, the midnight helicopter would ensure Su Nuwa's safe departure, which was the ideal outcome. But with Xiao Qi as a hostage, and the location being the symbolically significant Moonlit meeting, this was clearly a setup. If Su Nuwa didn't go, not to mention Xiao Qi's grim fate, with Su Nuwa's character, this event would become a nightmare and guilt she could never escape for the rest of her life. Go. His voice calmed down, carrying a decisive tone. Otherwise, even if you leave, this burden will weigh on your heart for life, and you will never truly feel at ease. I'll accompany you. Nothing will happen. There are still 3,000 in the shopping mall currency, which should be enough to handle any emergencies. Su Nuwa closed her eyes, took a deep breath. And when she opened them again, her gaze was filled with cold determination. All right. The round trip from here to the hot spring resort in Sapporo was over 300 kilometers. No matter what, she would definitely miss the original midnight appointment. But she had to go. She couldn't bear the thought of an innocent little girl suffering because of her involvement. That was the bottom line she desperately wanted to protect after stepping into the darkness. She quickly sent an urgent message to Ying's contact through a secure channel, temporarily changing the rendezvous location to a backup coordinate near the hot spring resort in Sapporo, and earnestly requested the other party to wait. Then, citing the need for rest due to feeling unwell, she politely declined all subsequent arrangements. Following that, she directly approached the hotel logistics, using the excuse of needing to urgently return to Edo to handle an emergency, and rented a decent off-road vehicle. The engine roared, and the tires tore through the cold winter night air. Su Nuwa drove at high speed, although she wasn't a professional racer. The extreme driving training she experienced at the Crescent Group training base allowed her to push the vehicle's performance to the limit. After more than an hour, that familiar little wooden house with warm lights reappeared in her sight. This time, the mood is completely different from that night on Valentine's Day. Back then, it was about relaxation, confiding, and reconciliation. Now, it is a looming crisis and heavy responsibilities. Promises parked the car in the distant shadows and approached quietly towards Moonlight Princess. The warm yellow light spilling from the wooden cabin's window now appeared like the eyes of a giant beast luring its prey. Promises had no idea what was about to unfold. Did the new moon group suddenly kidnap Xiao Qi just to silence her? To eliminate the loose ends from her last mission? Or were they forcing her to complete the final step of her initiation? Or had they already sensed her intention to leave the organization, and this was a meticulously designed trap? She parked the car, adjusted her suit jacket, took a deep breath, and pushed open the familiar wooden door. Inside, the lighting remained warm and soft, with the air filled with the scent of sake and a faint, elusive fragrance. Moonlight Princess sat alone, elegantly pouring herself a drink at the low table. She wore a wine-red silk slip dress that accentuated her snow-like skin and breathtaking curves. Hearing the door, she slowly lifted her enchanting eyes. Upon seeing Promises standing at the door, her vibrant red lips slowly curled into a smile that was both mesmerizing and chilling. Ah, Xiao Nuwa, you finally came. She downed her sake in one gulp, her gaze confident and composed, as if everything was under her control. Sister knew you would come. Chapter 141. The final ritual. Promises nodded expressionlessly, quickly scanning the room. Besides Moonlight Princess, there was no one else. Her gaze fell on the tightly closed inner room door. Is Xiao Qi inside? Is there an ambush from the new moon group hidden behind that door? Teacher, help me check inside, she urged in her mind. Okay, Su Yunju's phantom responded, drifting directly towards the inner wall. As an observer outside the screen, he had the equivalent of a full map cheat. But his range couldn't exceed 20 meters from Promises as an anchor point. Promises slowly sat down on the cushion opposite Moonlight Princess, her back straight. But her muscles remained in a subtly tense state, ready to spring at any moment. Moonlight Princess seemed oblivious to the vigilance in her eyes, smiling as she picked up a new wine glass, filling it with clear liquid and pushing it in front of her. Congratulations to our Xiao Nua for ascending to the position of chess saint. Come. This drink is a blessing from your sister. Promises looked at the glass of wine without moving. Thank you. She dared not drink, nor did she want to. Moonlight Princess noticed her small gesture, not angry, but rather smiling even more charmingly. Xiao Nua is becoming increasingly cautious. But that's good, in this world. A little more caution means a little more chance of survival. She shifted her tone, still gentle but with a hint of significance, to be honest. Some sisters in the association have been quite critical of you lately. Promise's pupils constricted. Why? The lady under the moon played with the wine glass in her hand. Speaking slowly, they believe that now, with her achievements and fame, she would probably no longer be willing or able to return to the shadows and be a tool that obeys orders. She raised her eyes to lock onto Su Nua's gaze. That's why during the assassination of the figure from the palace, she let that little girl go, wanting to leave herself a way out and preserve a kind thought for the future, right? Su Nua felt a chill in her heart, but sneered coldly on the surface. Retorting, a way out? I've already killed that figure, my hands stained with the blood of high-ranking officials. Is that a way out for myself? Your suspicions are quite ridiculous. Just then, Su Yunzhou's phantom returned through the wall, quickly informing her in her consciousness. Xiao Qi is inside, lying on the tatami, looking fine, just asleep with steady breathing. But his tone carried a rare surprise and seriousness. There's another person inside. You would never guess who it is. Su Nua felt slightly relieved that Xiao Qi was temporarily safe, but upon hearing the latter part, her heart tightened again. Who? Could it be that person? Now it was Su Yunzhou's turn to be shocked. What? How did you guess? Su Nua calmly analyzed. For Xiao Qi to be quietly taken away from such a crowded place, the most likely scenario is that she knows and trusts the person who took her. Furthermore, he specifically brought Moonlit Lady's words to me, leading me here. That's the most direct connection. And you told me last time that he wouldn't survive past February, right? Now, February is almost over, and he is still healthy. So, Su Yunzhou was taken aback, then suddenly realized. Initially, when he saw the brief note in that person's file about a sudden heart attack, he thought it was just a coincidence. Now it seemed that it was no accident at all. It was Su Nua's doing. Moonlit Lady was unaware of the rapid exchange between the master and disciple in their consciousness. She continued to smile sweetly, as if discussing everyday matters. Actually, I have complete trust in you, Su Nua. Over the past year, your contributions to the organization have been evident to all, especially during the assassination of that figure. It was executed cleanly and beautifully, earning even personal praise from the esteemed elder. Her tone shifted subtly. However, according to the old traditions of our organization, before core members officially debut and independently carry out the most critical tasks, there is one last small ritual that needs to be completed. I held back from mentioning it before, thinking you were still young and I felt sorry for you. But now, Moonlit Lady's gaze slowly swept over Su Nua's youthful body, carrying an explicit appraisal. Now our little Nua has grown up, maturing and blossoming into such a captivating beauty that even I am moved. It's time to complete this final, crucial lesson. Su Nua felt an increasingly ominous premonition, her voice tightening. What ritual? Moonlit Lady leaned forward, her breath fragrant, her red lips almost touching Su Nua's ear, speaking in a voice only they could hear. Filled with seduction and coldness, break desires, sever the heart's demons. Su Nua's eyes widened in shock. You are still pure, aren't you? The voice of the Moonlit Princess was low and filled with insinuation. How could this be? A top assassin, a perfect weapon, must have no weaknesses, especially not physical or emotional ones. Desire is the sweetest yet deadliest poison, the easiest trap to lose oneself in, making one vulnerable. If, in the future, during a mission, one were to be inadvertently attracted by the target's charm or threatened and manipulated through such means, the consequences would be unimaginable, potentially endangering the entire organization. Sun Nua clenched her fists, trembling slightly from extreme anger, humiliation, and fear. The Moonlit Princess seemed to be admiring a piece of art that she was about to shatter and reshape, continuing in a tone that was both sickeningly sweet and brutally cruel. Therefore, this final purification ritual is to thoroughly teach you, Sun Nua, to personally experience love between men and women, making it as ordinary as eating and drinking, turning it into a tool that can be used or discarded at will, no longer stirring even the slightest ripple or entanglement in your heart. She leaned in closer, her red lips almost brushing against Sun Nua's earlobe, whispering like a demon. Only by stripping away this last layer of humanity can you transform into a truly qualified, flawless blade of the new moon, without any weaknesses. You will not succeed. Sun Nua forced out these 4 words through clenched teeth, her voice distorted by extreme anger and humiliation. Almost instinctively, she exerted force in her waist, wanting to stand up abruptly and dash out of this nauseating place. However, at that moment, a sudden wave of intense weakness and helplessness swept through her limbs. Her legs gave way, and she fell back onto the cushion. Even lifting her arm felt unusually strenuous. What have you done? She was filled with rage and confusion, desperately trying to recall and analyze in her chaotic mind. She hadn't eaten anything. Hadn't touched that glass of wine, and even when she entered the room, she subconsciously held her breath for a moment, quickly identifying with her training that the air had no common chemical smells of tranquilizers or anesthetics. Don't waste your efforts, Sun Nua. This is a fragrance personally concocted by Lord Moonlit, colorless and odorless, that gradually takes effect through the skin. The Moonlit Princess stood gracefully, walked in front of the weakened Sun Nua, crouched down, and her icy fingertips gently brushed against Sun Nua's flushed cheeks from anger and the drug's effects. Whispering softly in her ear, "Sister is actually quite envious of you, you know. The one presiding over the ceremony for you tonight is not some random person." The moonlit princess's gaze turned towards the closed inner room door, her tone becoming respectful yet ambiguous. "It is Lord Moonlit himself, personally intervening." Sun Nua felt a chill run through her entire body. Moonlit? That was the highest level of the New Moon organization, a legendary figure rarely seen. The moonlit princess continued to whisper in her ear, her voice filled with malicious temptation. "Lord Moonlit will surely be very gentle and patient in teaching you, Sun Nua. After all, Xiao Nua is the most precious treasure our organization has had for many years." With that, Yuexiaji stood up, bowed respectfully towards the inner room door, and spoke in a soft, charming voice. "Lord Yueya, Xiao Nua is ready and awaits your presence." Inside the room, there was a moment of silence. Then a deep, hoarse male voice, carrying an eerie, otherworldly magnetism, floated out. "Good. You may leave." Yuexiaji bowed again. Not even glancing at the despondent and furious Su Nua on the ground, quietly exited the wooden house, and gently closed the door behind her. With a soft click, under the warm yellow light, Su Nua sat limply, staring blankly at the inner door as it slowly opened a crack. "It's him. It's actually him." Chapter 142, Yueya. When the inner door was fully opened and the figure stepped out of the shadows, fully exposed to the warm light, Su Nua felt a chilling tremor despite having prepared herself mentally. It was Yi Gao, that familiar face, now wearing a profoundly cold expression that was entirely different from his usual demeanor. How could the impeccably dressed, charming Yi Jiao Wuduan, who was always so careful in his interactions, be the highest leader of the Xianyue group, known for his mysterious power of life and death? The rumored illegitimate son of a certain influential political figure from a distant land, whose public identity was that of an inconspicuous, somewhat marginalized professional Go player? To be lurking in such a noble, elegant field, one that would hardly raise any suspicion? What deep schemes and perfect disguises he had. It turned out that the most watchful eyes and the deepest black hands had always been right beside her, observing everything quietly in the most harmless manner. What sent shivers down her spine even more was the faint, sweet scent that lingered as Yi Gao had leaned in to speak to her in the lounge earlier. That was not an illusion. Nor was it a change in his perfume. It was indeed a specific fragrance, or some kind of precursor medium. She had unknowingly fallen into the trap during their close contact without any guard. It turned out this trap had begun in the world of Go. Yi Gao, or rather, Yueya, walked slowly in front of the limp Su Nua and stopped. He was still impeccably dressed, his tie perfectly knotted, maintaining the demeanor of a refined elite in the Go community. However, the layer of gentle elegance on his face had completely fallen away, replaced by a calm that looked down upon her, as if he were the creator admiring his finest work. He leaned slightly forward, his gaze greedily lingering on Su Nua's face, which was flushed alluringly due to the effects of the drug. His voice returned to the gentle tone that was like a spring breeze. "Xiao Nua, are you surprised?" He chuckled softly, the sound resonating clearly in the silent room, chilling her to the bone. "You should know, I have always admired you, Xiao Nua. Whether on the chessboard or in the training ground, your talent, temperament, resilience, and even this face that I must admit is nearly perfect have far exceeded my most optimistic expectations. You are a very intelligent and capable child. Given time, it won't take years, the position of that foolish woman will be beneath you. The organization needs fresh, strong, and incredibly beautiful blood like yours to inject new vitality and reach new heights. As long as we join forces and collaborate sincerely, the entire region will dance in our palms. You will stand by my side, sharing in this supreme glory." His voice dropped lower, carrying a hypnotic allure. "Thus, this final purification ritual, which will strip you of your mortal form and truly integrate you into the shadow of the new moon, must be presided over by me personally. I will, as the apostle of the new moon, perform the divine ceremony for you. This body and power are divine gifts, meant to carve open the path to reality for you, channeling the dark lunar power into your pure vessel. Pain is the incense on the altar, and trembling is the dance that welcomes the descent of the divine. When the mark of the new moon is etched in your belly, the old you will perish in that divine flame, and the new you will rise from the ashes, becoming a living artifact serving the dark moon." With that, he wore a smile of determination as he began to leisurely unbutton his suit jacket, his movements elegant and composed, as if conducting a solemn sacrifice. However, just as he undid the first button, a sudden change occurred. The body on the ground, which had been rendered immobile by the drug's effects, seemed to be yanked up by an invisible string. In an extremely abrupt and completely unnatural manner, Su Nua's core suddenly surged with power, and his legs sprang up from the tatami like they were equipped with precision springs. Although his posture was slightly stiff from the lingering effects of the drug, the speed and explosive force, along with the distinctly cold aura that emanated in that moment, caused the nearby Moon Knight to instinctively widen her eyes in shock. Su Nua's consciousness was both surprised and delighted, almost calling out, "Teacher, can you really control my body directly like this?" Su Yunzhou's consciousness replied, "Yes, don't get distracted. Focus. Remember this last lesson on how to overcome the strong with the weak, and to use skill to defeat brute force in desperate situations. We have only 15 minutes. There may still be 4 others outside. We must be quick." At this moment, the one in control of this body was no longer the Su Nua, deeply engulfed in the drug's effects and despair. Nor was it the Su Yunzhou in another time and space. Instead, it was a combat composite born from the extreme pressure of both wills. A fleeting existence that could perhaps be called Su Nua, without a word, without hesitation, and without giving Moon Knight any time to react or think. The best defense was offense. It was the only path to survival. Su Yunzhou, in front of the screen, moved his fingers across the keyboard with almost ghostly speed. WSD controlled the direction, the mouse precisely clicked to lock onto the target, and he heavily pressed the spacebar. On the screen, as Su Nua's inertia from getting up had not yet completely dissipated, his right hand instinctively grabbed the ceramic wine pot from the low table. With a flick of his wrist, the wine splashed. The pot whistled through the air with a dull sound and struck directly toward the temple of Yu Yijian with fierce precision. True to being the highest leader of the new moon, Yu Yijian's instinctive crisis response, honed by living on the edge of danger, saved his life. He abruptly leaned his head back to the side, and the ceramic pot grazed his forehead, crashing into the wall behind him with a loud bang, shattering into countless fragments. With wine and shards flying everywhere. What? Yu Yijian was both shocked and angry, completely unprepared for Su Nua, under the influence of the drug, to launch such a fierce attack. Moreover, this was not her usual fighting style at all. She had secretly hidden such a terrifying trump card in her combat skills, this cunning and restraint. However, Su Nua's assault was like a torrential storm, giving his opponent no chance to breathe or think. Taking advantage of his spinning momentum, his left leg swept toward Yu Yijian's side, targeting her kidney area with the force of a coiled steel whip. This whip-like kick was executed with a tricky angle, precise timing, and overwhelming power, displaying the demeanor of a master. Yu Yijian's pupils widened in shock. He barely twisted his body, using the outer side of his arm to block the kick. Thud! A dull sound of impact echoed. Yu Yijian felt a sharp pain coursing through his arm. His entire body was forced back by the immense force, crashing against the wall, his blood surging. He stared intently at Su Nua, whose eyes were cold as ice. His voice filled with disbelief. How could your martial skills reach such a level? This is not what the new moon taught you. You. Suddenly, a thought struck him, and disbelief flashed in his eyes. A true prodigy is indeed a true prodigy. To be able to comprehend everything without a teacher. And perhaps blend different styles, secretly honing combat techniques to such a degree. I truly did not misjudge you. After the shock, a twisted admiration and desire surged within him. What a pity. Yu Yijian, enduring the intense pain in his arm and abdomen, forced a sinister yet excited smile. As if a wounded beast had spotted a more worthy prey to conquer. After all, you are just a woman, limited by your strength. Otherwise, that last strike would have broken my arm. But this is fine. He licked the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes becoming dangerous and excited. A motionless puppet is not interesting. To personally conquer, refine, and ultimately tame a little wildcat like you, full of thorns and infinite potential. Making you willingly expose your belly, that is what truly satisfies. Before his words could finish, a fierce glint surged in his eyes. And seizing the brief moment when Su Nua's old strength had been exhausted and new strength had yet to arise, he brazenly counterattacked. A straightforward punch, devoid of any fancy moves, rushed towards Su Nua's face. The wind from the punch was sharp and ear-piercing, clearly indicating that he had undergone extremely rigorous, even brutal, combat training. Su Nua seemed to have anticipated this punch long ago, at the moment the fist was about to reach him. He suddenly leaned back as if his upper body were broken, rolling sideways to evade this deadly strike. In the midst of the roll, he had quietly maneuvered to the side and rear of the figure in the moonlight. The figure, sensing danger, threw a punch that missed and leaned forward. Alarm bells ringing in their mind as they hurriedly tried to turn around, but it was already too late. Su Nua, in the midst of rising from the roll, had already reached into the front of their clothing, grabbing something amidst the tumultuous waves. Chapter 143. Overcoming obstacles. Su Nua's mind instantly became chaotic, almost gasping in shock. A wave of embarrassment washing over them. Wait, teacher. Where are you touching? But in the next second, they understood. The protective talisman worn at their chest was yanked off by Su Nua, without hesitation and tightly gripped in their palm. Simultaneously, their body, like a bowstring pulled to its limit, suddenly released. With no retreat, no hesitation, they lunged forward, channeling the last remnants of strength. The ultimate techniques bestowed by the master of combat, and Su Nua's indomitable will, all into this one attack. Fast as lightning, fierce as a raging tiger. With the wedge-shaped tip of the wooden talisman, they aimed for the area just below the heart point on the back of the figure in the moonlight. A spot proven to be extremely vulnerable through a combination of traditional meridian knowledge and modern anatomical science. With a piercing sound, although it was merely a wooden talisman, with absolute speed, strength, and precision backing it, it was enough to be lethal. The figure's forward motion instantly froze. Their eyes bulged, face filled with utter shock, confusion, and primal fear of death. Thud! Their legs gave way, and they collapsed forward onto the ground, twitching slightly before becoming completely still. Su Nua understood. A sharp impact to this area with sufficient force could cause instant paralysis of the respiratory muscles, leading to erratic heartbeats and sudden cardiac arrest. No wonder the official cause of death later diagnosed was sudden cardiac disease. Su Nua knelt on one knee, using the wooden talisman to support themselves against the cold floor, barely managing not to fall down as well. Gasping for breath, the effects of the medicine and the recent high-intensity exertion weighed heavily on their body. However, when Su Nua forced themselves to rise and glance towards the inner room, their movement paused slightly. Xiao-Qi was inside, temporarily safe, but time was running out. Over 3 minutes had passed since the body had erupted with energy. There was no time to worry about Xiao-Qi. At this moment, self-preservation was paramount. Carrying an unconscious child would be impossible. They could only focus on escaping the immediate danger, allowing the body to recover from the effects of the medicine before considering anything else. Su Nua took a deep breath and opened the door. Outside in the corridor, there were indeed people. Yu Xiaji had not strayed far. She was accompanied by 3 other female members, all dressed in black tight-fitting outfits, standing like statues in the snow just a short distance from the door. Upon hearing the door, all 4 turned their heads simultaneously. When they saw that the one stepping out was not the expected, content figure of Lord Yu Yi, nor was it the captured or unconscious Su Nua, but rather a cold-eyed, unsteady yet upright Su Nua. Yu Xiaji's eyes, usually filled with seduction, revealed genuine shock and bewilderment for the first time. Little Nua? Her voice was slightly off due to extreme surprise. Outside the screen, Su Yunju quickly redeemed another 5-minute experience card, restoring her stamina once again. Su Nua didn't give her a chance to react at all. The moment the door opened, his body shot out like a cheetah. The first target was the nearest member to the door, who was holding a short stick and still had a look of astonishment on their face. Su Nua crouched down, dodging the opponent's instinctive swing, and delivered a swift and precise low sweep kick, striking hard at the outside of the opponent's ankle. Crack! The clear sound of a bone breaking echoed. Ah! The woman screamed and instantly collapsed, rolling on the ground while clutching her twisted ankle. Su Nua didn't stop. He rolled on the ground and effortlessly grabbed a decorative pebble from the fallen woman's side, throwing it without hesitation towards another female member who was about to draw her knife. Whoosh! The stone struck accurately at the opponent's wrist. Ugh! The woman let out a muffled groan, and the knife flew out of her hand as her wrist instantly swelled. Su Nua sprang up like a ghost, pouncing towards the third woman who had taken a defensive stance. The woman reacted quickly, aiming a knife hand strike at Su Nua's neck. Su Nua did not dodge. He blocked with his left hand while his right hand shot out like lightning, grabbing the opponent's wrist joint and twisting and pushing with force. Ah! The third woman felt a sharp pain in her wrist and was thrown aside by Su Nua, crashing into a pillar and temporarily losing her combat ability. The entire process took no more than a minute. Only the last opponent, Yu Xiaji, remained. Xiao Nua, you really surprise me time and again, she said, her expression vigilant. Her voice cold, devoid of any sweetness from before. Su Nua remained silent, staring at her intently, his feet moving as he calculated the distance and remaining time. Yu Xiaji slowly slid 2 gleaming short knives from the wide sleeves of her kimono, holding them reverse style and assuming a standard assassination stance. Let me see how much more you have hidden, she said. Just as her words fell, Su Nua suddenly moved. But instead of charging at Yu Xiaji, he bent down abruptly, scooping up a large handful of snow mixed with gravel from the ground and throwing it forcefully toward Yu Xiaji's face. Huh! Yu Xiaji instinctively squinted and turned her head to avoid it. In that brief moment when her vision was obscured by the snowflakes, Su Nua suddenly pushed off the ground, causing the snow to explode. His body shot forward like an arrow, rapidly closing the distance to Yu Xiaji. In the gap before the snowflakes had fully settled, he clenched his right hand into a fist, his forearm muscles tightening like steel wires, channeling all his remaining strength into that punch. His waist and hips moved in unison as he twisted and delivered a shoulder strike. Half-step explosive punch. The most straightforward, powerful, and fierce killing move from Xingyiquan. No tricks. Just a single fatal blow. His fist, carrying an unstoppable momentum, slammed solidly into the soft area between Yu Xiaji's chest and abdomen. Poof! Yu Xiaji's eyes bulged, and her charming face twisted in an instant. A mouthful of blood mixed with gastric fluid erupted violently. She felt as if she had been hit by a speeding truck. Her feet leaving the ground and flying backward, crashing through the wooden railing behind her with a loud bang, and landing heavily in the cold snow. Su Nua maintained his punching stance, gasping for breath, his chest heaving like a bellows. The outburst just now had nearly drained him of all his strength, and the feeling of the drug's effects surged back like a tide. Time was limited. There was no time to worry about their lives. Su Nua forced himself to walk out of the villa. In the distance, through the sparse trees, he could vaguely see the outline of the black SUV he had driven, quietly lying in the snowy night. When the time came, he would use the last 5 minutes to drive as far as he could. Su Nua's consciousness excitedly said, "Thank you again for saving me, teacher." Su Yunjiao's voice responded in his mind, weary yet reassuringly steady. Don't speak. Conserve your strength. Focus your mind. Hold on, Nua. The people from Shadow should be arriving soon according to the revised coordinates. Everything will pass. But as the words fell, his footsteps suddenly halted. His expression turned grim in an instant. Ahead, about 20 meters away, at the exit of the path, a dozen figures in black clothing silently blocked the way. They spread out in a semicircle, sealing off all possible escape routes. Although they did not visibly raise weapons, their trained stances and cold gazes indicated that they were not friendly. The leader was a woman, tall and fit, wearing a black mask that revealed only her eyes. Her gaze hardened by years of battlefield experience. Raven, the ruthless Hell instructor known for her severe training at the Crescent Group's secret training base. Su Nua's heart sank to the bottom. To eliminate these dozen evidently more formidable and fully armed professional combatants within 5 minutes, and then successfully escape, Su Yunjiao, in front of the screen, felt cold sweat bead at his temples, rapidly calculating various possibilities, and the conclusion chilled him. It was too precarious, almost impossible. Wasn't Su Nua supposed to escape safely and embark on a new life? Could history change? Was today truly the day it would all end here? All the efforts, all the plans, all the struggles, would they really come to nothing on this snowy night in Hokkaido? No. The future me, capable of anything, could not have made no arrangements for this. Just then, Raven suddenly raised her hand and lightly clapped. She looked Su Nua up and down, and a fleeting glimmer of appreciation passed through her usually cold and stern eyes. Little Nua, Raven began. Her voice somewhat deep, but no longer the emotionless coldness of the training ground. It carried a strange warmth and sentiment. Very good, you truly. Time and again. Far exceeded our expectations. Su Nua wasn't he really listening? Or rather, he heard her, but dared not believe it, nor had the time to do so. His entire focus was locked tightly on the dozen elite combatants in front of him. Their positions, the contours of the holsters bulging at their waists. Their hands poised to draw weapons or engage in combat at any moment, and the tacit understanding between them that blocked all angles. Her mind raced, simulating various possibilities for a desperate counterattack, weapon snatching, creating chaos, and then carving a bloody path out. Yet every scenario pointed to a grim outcome. For the opposing side consisted of over a dozen well-armed, highly coordinated professional fighters, and she had only 5 minutes left. The Raven seemed to sense her vigilance. She raised her hand and slowly removed the black mask from her face. Beneath the mask was the face of an Asian woman, weathered yet still radiating a sense of heroism. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, her gaze sharp as ever, but the corners of her mouth seemed to carry a hint of a smile. She looked at Su Nua, her tone clearer and more formal. Xiao Nua, today here. I should perhaps reintroduce myself. She paused and said, word by word, my real name is Chen Xiaobai, a Chinese American. Chen Xiaobai? A name that seemed completely at odds with the cold codename Raven and her image as a hellish instructor. However, this was just the beginning. Following this, Chen Xiaobai made an even more puzzling, yet somehow resonant gesture that felt like an ancient solemn ritual. She raised her right hand, fingers together, palm down, arm extended. Then slowly moved it, so that the tip of her thumb pointed precisely at the location of her heart on the left side of her chest. An odd gesture, reminiscent of something seen in ancient scrolls or martial arts legends. Her next word struck like thunder, echoing in the snowy night. I am the incense bearer of the Xiong Gang, temporarily holding the position of the Shuanghua Hongquan, favored by Meng Langu and all family members. The name Xiong Gang. It seemed to carry a historical resonance, the neon reflections of the bustling Shanghai, and the solitary sails and iron wool that crossed oceans. In the early 20th century, during a time of great upheaval that had not been seen in 5,000 years, it left a vivid mark on the shores of Shanghai. Originating from the late Ming and early Republic period in Shanghai, the first founder was Du Qinglan, daughter of the infamous Shanghai godfather Du Zhuxing. Initially formed to protect the oppressed female workers of silk factories during chaotic times, it gradually evolved into a tightly knit organization with strict discipline, strong national sentiment, and a sense of brotherhood. At certain historical moments, its influence rivaled that of the Hongmen and Qingbang. As the tides of time changed, its core members crossed oceans and eventually took root in places like San Francisco, becoming a deeply rooted force within the overseas Chinese community. With complex connections and influence in both political and business circles, they protected their compatriots, upheld rights, and navigated gray areas, weathering a century of storms, mysterious yet powerful. This Raven, this fearsome chief instructor of the New Moon Group, was actually Chen Xiaobai, representing the highest martial power within the Xiong Gang. A core expert from a gang that was inherently opposed to an extreme organization like the New Moon Group. She actually managed to infiltrate the inner core of the Crescent Group, taking the position of chief instructor without ever being exposed. What remarkable courage, ability, and disguise techniques she possesses. If her identity were to be revealed within the Crescent Group, it would undoubtedly lead to a dead end with no chance of escape. Why would she take such a huge risk? I've never heard of any direct and intense conflict between the Crescent Group and the overseas organization. Chen Xiaobai observed the shock, vigilance, and confusion swirling in Su Nua's eyes, and her smile deepened slightly. I forgot to tell you, Xiao Nua, my infiltration into the Crescent Group, taking on the role of chief instructor, as one of the most important and long-term mission objectives, to closely observe you, assess your character, potential, and essence, following the teachings left by Lan Gu, to train and refine you as much as possible, while also secretly protecting you from being completely destroyed by the truly dirty methods of the Crescent Group. For instance, the incident with Zhong Yiqi was also a test for you. If you had truly harmed that innocent child, you wouldn't be seeing me here tonight, speaking these words to you. As for tonight, her gaze swept over the chaotic hot spring resort, her tone carrying a rare, almost teasing astonishment. To be honest, everything tonight was already under our plan and monitoring. When Yu Yijin appeared, we were ready to act, but everyone, including myself, greatly underestimated you. She looked at Su Nua with admiration in her eyes. You managed to kill Yu Yijin despite being under the influence of the fragrance, with your strength severely weakened. Relying solely on your tenacious willpower, you almost carved a path through this dead end by yourself. This completely exceeded our expectations, but it was also so impressive that it left us speechless. Su Nua was completely bewildered. Her body remained in a defensive posture, but her mind was momentarily overloaded by the vast amount of information. The overseas organization, the teachings of Lan Gu, over a year of close observation and assessment, secret protection during training. Tonight was supposed to be a rescue operation. All of this sounded like a fantastical tale, yet it somehow fit together seamlessly. Many details from her training, some seemingly harsh, yet always allowing her to break through limits without causing irreversible harm, now seemed to have a different explanation. Chapter 145. The second master and the lantern keeper seeing her still tense and vigilant, Chen Xiaobai couldn't help but chuckle and shake her head. A hint of apology in her smile. It seems that I'm not very good at expressing myself. Or perhaps I haven't made myself clear enough for you to feel at ease. She stepped forward, her tone becoming more serious. So, let me share another secret that might put you a bit more at ease. She looked Su Nua in the eyes and said clearly, the international neutral organization you contacted that promised to provide you with a new identity and safe passage, Shadow. She paused, delivering the final answer. It is actually one of the overseas branches under our organization, specifically handling certain special operations and providing high-end protection. Therefore, you were able to smoothly pass their review and receive the commitment. From the very beginning, I have been monitoring and promoting your file and assessment throughout the